Manhattan Neighborhood Network, in partnership with the League of Women Voters of New York, Gotham Gazette, and the New York Amsterdam News, is pleased to bring you an interview with Pierre, the Reform Party candidate running to be elected in City Council District 9. I'm Eleanor Tatum, publisher and editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News. New York City's general election is Tuesday, November 7th. Welcome, Pierre.
Eleanor, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
What are your specific qualifications to represent District 9?
I think District 9 is in need of an individual who can represent the community in a myriad of ways. One, in terms of enforcing the laws that are currently on the books. I'm currently helping a building complex on 117th because there has been a situation where a president has been putting padlocks on doors. So making sure that people's housing rights and other rights are met is something that my team is very serious about. Going beyond that, I believe you need an individual that is serious about tackling the issues in our community, specifically the 13% unemployment rate in our community that's been stagnant over decades, addressing the fact that currently there is a housing crisis in Harlem that we are well aware of, but how do you tackle it? Do you have policies that specifically address the issue? And moving on to education, Community Education Council District 5 has just reached out to say we are at a crisis point in our community system. We only have 4 libraries and 2 librarians in the entire district. These are problems that have been persistent for decades, but the question is who is going to be the individual to build a coalition and solve these issues. So that's why I believe that I'm qualified for this job.
What are the qualifications that you actually hold?
Absolutely. So
what's
one,
your track record?
Yeah, one, I'm the only teacher in this race, and I believe we need an educator to help solve some of our educational woes in Harlem. And so 10 years ago, when I found a lack of air conditioners at IS 143, I began to advocate to ensure that that wasn't the case. And I worked with the administration over the years to ensure there were air conditioners in that particular school system, but moving forward to make sure that there were air conditioners all across the city. Now, in conjunction with New York City, a new initiative has just come online where we will have air conditioners in every classroom, but that's not nearly enough. We need to do much more to ensure that all of our schools are doing well, to make sure that the school I was supposed to go to in Harlem is doing well, because right now it's ranked 1984th out of 2,300 schools on School Digger, and that's not good enough. It means that thousands of students in our schools have not been serviced. So one, I believe we need an educator to be in this position. Two, I believe we need an individual who's capable of getting things done. Right now, there have been 0 sponsored bills in Harlem or coming out of Harlem for elected leadership. I was responsible for putting my opponent's state Senate candidate in jail because he was scamming people on Craigslist. This is the sort of advocacy I believe that we need. And so when I see individuals coming down to run for city council because the salary has been jacked up, I do not believe that's right for Harlem. I believe what Harlem needs is an individual that is dedicated to solving these persistent woes that have been a part of our community for decades. And I believe any elected leader that's currently in office has to account for why this has persisted for so long.
Okay, I just want to clear something up there. It's not a candidate that's on the ballot. It was someone that was previously running, correct?
This last November, John Girotis was on your ballot as the state Senate, the GOP state Senate candidate from Rikers.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't wanted to make sure that the audience was clear that it was nobody that was currently on the...
No, it was John Girotis, the Republican state Senate candidate.
Now, as a representative for your district, what would your role be to discourage discrimination against marginalized communities, such as immigrants, Muslims, LGBTQ individuals, and people of color?
This is something that is very, very important to our campaign. On January 11th, during the debate, we discussed what we will do to make sure that we bring attention to the needs of populations that have not been serviced currently, including the LGBTQ population, including our young folks who are currently being locked up in Harlem instead of getting the legal attention that they need. And so this is where I believe you have to be an advocate. You have to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. We know that we have a problem where for every 10 individuals incarcerated, 9 are black. If we know this, then we have to use our laws to ensure that these numbers are changed instead of persisting for decades as they have. I believe that you need someone, again, who has their finger on the pulse and who's willing to take the steps to make these changes. And the problem that I see in Harlem is that these changes are not happening, and the community members are speaking up and saying, why not? And so it's time for new leadership.
How would you go about helping to curb youth violence in the community?
Yeah, well, one, I think you have to be in the community, because I have individuals who come to me on a daily basis with particular situations, whether they're about violent situations or non-violent situations. So one, I think you have to be there to address these issues. And then moving forward on a macro level, we have to get the dollars into our community to tackle some of these issues. And again, when you have zero sponsored bills coming out of our elected leadership and out of the city council position, what it speaks to is the fact that these programs aren't coming online. When we know that our minority and juvenile population require services, we have to be a part of that change. We have to be proactive. Right now, it's not happening. So one, I would be there in the community to ensure that we're addressing these issues in real time. But two, I would be advocating specifically for the dollars that we need in our community to ensure that these programs come online. For instance, the $1 million in public discretionary funds that should have gone to programs to service our populations never occurred. And this is the sort of injustice that I'm talking about, and we have to curb it. It has to end.
Now, when we talk about youth and youth violence, you know, we immediately think about the police. And what would you do to help improve police-community relations? I
am, for the most part, at this point, satisfied that our precincts are doing the job in Harlem. Harlem is a fairly safe community, and I want people to understand that. But there's more that can be done. When we had a community forum in November to discuss these issues, what we found is that the #1 issue coming out of the community was a relationship issue, just in terms on a daily basis, saying hi to individuals, knowing their names, and having the sort of relationship where people feel comfortable sharing information. And so I think that's where it starts. But one, again, you have to have the community forum so that you can know what the community needs are and then pair that with where the NYPD is. But without that conversation occurring, you can't get to the next level. So now we have the data from that community forum that we are going to use to help improve NYPD community relations. But I believe that's the process that we have to be going through in Harlem, and that's what I believe is currently lacking.
So is it community policing that's the answer?
Community policing is part of it. It's an environment. It's ensuring that our constituents have a place to turn to and that they feel that the NYPD is a partner in the process. But without communication, none of that happens, and that's where there is currently a breakdown. When I'm talking to our constituents, they're saying, well, here's the problem. How do we get it fixed? And the answer is supposed to be to call your city council person so that that city council person can advocate for those changes. And whether it's a macro level problem like a 13% unemployment rate or a micro level issue like taking out benches outside of A. Phillips Randolph Square Park, where now people who want to ride the bus, whether you're elderly or disabled or otherwise, have no place to sit. These are the challenges that you have to face, but you have to be in the community in order to know that they exist. And currently, we need more.
One of the issues also in Harlem is housing and gentrification in Harlem. But one of the things that is happening is that landlords are trying to be able to turn over their buildings, so there's an issue of tenant harassment. And how do you plan to protect tenants from being harassed?
Yes. One, we have to enforce the laws that are already on the books. Tenant presidents, landlords are getting away with murder in terms of forcing individuals out, putting padlocks on doors, and then using those units for whatever he or she wants to do. This has to end. And this is what I'm talking about. In real time, we're dealing with this situation right now in Harlem on 117th. There is a building that's going through this, and so again, you have to be there to advocate for your constituents. I do believe it's in your interest to know the laws in depth so that you can advocate, because there are many laws that are situated currently in New York City to ensure that the things that are happening don't happen. And so we have to be on the front end of advocacy. But again, whether it's enforcing the laws on the books or adjusting the API to ensure that a lot of these programs are ones that Harlemites can actually afford, coming down from $60,000 to $35,000, we have to be proactive to address this housing crisis. We are the #1 city in terms of homelessness in the country, and this is intricately related to housing needs, and so we have to get on the front end. We know the problems, but we are not implementing effective policies to solve them.
All right, and so in the same vein, affordable housing is shrinking. It's shrinking all over the city, Manhattan in particular. Harlem is one of the places where we see luxury housing going up all over the place. Is New York City's affordable housing plan working? And what is the #1 thing you would do if you became the council member to continue to expand the number of affordable housing units in the district?
Our affordable housing program in New York City and Harlem is not working currently, and the #1 thing I would do to address this is to ensure that the programs dedicated to ensuring affordable housing in New York City are ones that Harlemites can price into. So adjusting that median income for most of these programs from $60,000 to $35,000 will allow our Harlemites to actually price into the program, and also taking a look at the credit rating system that currently is also pricing many of our Harlemites out. You have to understand how this process works to know where it is that people are getting into trouble or not able to access the system. And once you're able to do that, then you can, once you've diagnosed, then you can solve the problem. But I don't even believe there's been a proper diagnosis in terms of assessing the fact that many of our Harlemites cannot even use the programs that we hold up as the ones that push affordable housing in our city.
With NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, how would you propose to improve the quality of life of the people living within public housing in this city?
There are so many related problems, and again, I keep going back to what I hear in the community. I hear that NYCHA is a huge problem in the community. I hear that our shelters are a problem in the community. And so, #1, I promise that our shelters in Harlem are not going to be unsafe places. And this is what I'm hearing over and over, that people don't want to go to our shelters because they are unsafe.
Well, I was asking about public housing.
And going back to NYCHA and going back to our public housing, we have to ensure that the individuals in the NYCHA program stay in that program, because a lot of new negotiations will be coming up in the next years over whether certain buildings are still a part of the program and whether tenants are still a part of the program. And so, for me, it's about advocacy. It's about ensuring that our individuals in Harlem who are currently in the program can continue to take advantage of it and continue to have it service them, because what I'm hearing is that a lot of people are, again, being forced out of their public housing.
That is all we have time for. Thank you for being on the program,
Thank
Pierre.
you so much for having me.
The general election is on Tuesday, November 7th. For more information about voting, locating your poll site, and the candidates, you can visit the League of Women Voters website, lwvnyc.org, gothamgazette.com, amsterdamnews.com, or mnn.org. Thank you for watching Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Have a great day.